Appreciate day to you, my friends. My name is Pierce and this is my channel, Tales from the Road. Since you clicked on this video, clearly you're interested in learning a little bit about the amazingly interesting and very little visited country of Albania. I think this country is an amazing place, a hidden gem in Europe, and one of my favorite places that I've been in the last 2 years of traveling around the world. Today we're going to cover all the topics that you need to know before you go. So if that sounds good, let's do it. Before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that I'm on Patreon. The link is up here. If you guys don't want to support the channel monetarily, feel free to like and subscribe. Super helpful to me. So let's get to the content. Albania time. Albania, also known in their local language as Shqipëria, crazy name I know, is an amazing Balkan country that is sitting right in the heart of the southern Balkan Slavic countries and right above Greece. This country is very little known. For whatever reason in the United States, Albania isn't really on anyone's radar. I remember when I bought my ticket from the US to Albania, the lady just said, "Is this in Asia?" To which I remarked, "No, it's not in Asia." But clearly you know where Albania is, and the point is that today I'm gonna talk about everything you need to know before you go. So let's get into it. Let's start with money. There's no way around it. Albania is a very affordable country. First of all, they use the Albanian lek. That's the name of their currency. And the exchange rate right now, as this video is being made in 2022, is something like $1 equals 122 Albanian lek. If you go to any city in Albania, regardless of if it's the capital or even a smaller city, the prices are incredibly affordable. If you want to eat lunch, you'll probably end up paying something like $4 US, $5 US for a very nice portion of food. Beer in Albania costs less than $1. Wine in Albania costs maybe $1 or $2. But my favorite part about Albania is the cheap coffee. You can go to many different coffee shops around the country. It's a big coffee country in general, and you're never gonna pay more than $1.50, even for a specialty coffee like a cappuccino or a flat white. Albania is a very cash-based society, so I would recommend exchanging money as you come into the country, or withdrawing from the various legit banks and ATMs that they have in Albania. I found that the exchange rate you can get from the ATM was pretty good. The fees for my international card were pretty low. But the fact of the matter is that you're gonna need cash. So of course don't carry too much cash, as pickpocketing sometimes happens in Albania, but definitely carry enough cash to buy yourself a beer, an awesome plate of food, and any other Albanian delights you may come in contact with. So Piers, what should I bring to Albania? Well, that's a good question. Albania is an interesting country geographically as well as climate-wise. Albania is in the Adriatic part of the Balkans, so during the summer it gets ridiculously hot. We're talking 40 degrees Celsius or in the upper hundreds of Fahrenheit, 102 to 105. I was in Albania the first time, I believe in June, and the capital city Tirana was blisteringly hot. If you come in the winter, however, Albania is one of the most mountainous countries in the world. So Albania does get quite cold. There's a lot of snow-capped mountains in Albania. So if you're inland in Albania, it does get cold. The good news is that the temperature in a lot of the cities are quite moderate because a lot of the cities, the major ones, are on the coast. And the Adriatic coast in general doesn't get too cold. So in the winter, it's pretty fair. A great place to go in the winter. And during the summer, a lot of Albanians from the city, especially from Tirana, escape to the seaside, the city of Saranda in the south, which is the kind of like biggest kind of summer city, like sea city in Albania. So that's a big summer hotspot. The temperatures are cooler, the seaside is nice, it's very affordable, and yeah, you gotta love Saranda. Visas. For Americans, Albania is like the easiest visa country in the world. I remember them looking at my American passport, asking me no questions, stamping me in, and that was it. The customs and the migration into Albania, super easy. Also, Albania is one of the only countries in the world where Americans get not 6 months, not 9 months, but 1 year visa free. So if you find that Albania is like a good spot for you as a tourist or as a person like looking to live somewhere for 6 months or whatever, yeah, you can stay there super easily, and you can actually extend to a residence permit, I guess, pretty easily. There's a lot of jobs in Albania for people who are, for example, English teachers, and I met a lot of English teachers while I was there. There's also jobs in different infrastructure and different, for example, like EU-leaning positions. So it seems like there's a lot of international influence kind of slowly going into Albania, which was one of the world's most notoriously closed communist sort of societies for almost like 40 years in the 1900s. So there's a lot to look forward to about Albania. And the good news is, an American, because there are a lot of Albanians living in the United States, pretty easy to get in there, pretty easy to leave, come back, stay for a job as long as you want. SIM card and internet. SIM cards, pretty easy to get. You just walk into the various SIM card providers. They're all pretty cheap. I think I had like 10 gigabytes of data for like $10 US. So that was a really pretty reasonable deal as far as US standards go. And the good news is that the internet connection in Albania is actually pretty good. Obviously, it depends what kind of building you're living in, because the older buildings have the old kind of cables that they use for internet. So you want to live, if you're living in a newer building that has the fiber optics, it works quite well. The only thing that happened in my building where I was living in Albania, and I'm not sure if this is standard, but there were some rolling blackouts every once in a while. The electricity would sort of like stop working in my apartment for a period of time. So if you're super dedicated to your job and you need to be online like 100% of the time, that could be an issue, as the Albanian infrastructure honestly is not amazing. But you know, if you're not super tied to the internet, I don't think it's an issue. And the internet they do have when it's working is pretty good in comparison to the rest of the region. You know, it's just as good as any other Balkan country. Health and medicine. So I actually have an experience going to the healthcare system. I needed to do some blood testing when I was in Albania. And they have a lot of different options for medical services. They have European hospitals, they have American hospitals, they have local Albanian hospitals, which are pretty low ranked, and they also have Turkish hospitals. So I went to the Turkish hospital. Everybody there speaks Turkish, English, Albanian. Albanians are linguistically very, very talented people. So finding people that speak English in the medical system is pretty reasonable, unless maybe you go to a local hospital. And I thought the quality of care was pretty good. It wasn't too expensive, not too cheap either. I think I got, for example, like a full blood work for like $80 US, and the consultation was free. So yeah, and I just walked in, showed my passport, and that was it. So I would say the Albanian medical system is probably okay. There's a lot of influence from abroad. Lots of Albanians are doctors. They have also a reasonable like medical tourism for dental work. So don't feel like you're you know, in a country without services. Although the infrastructure in Albania, depending on the city, can rank from really good to really poor. I think the medical system in Tirana, the capital, is you know, it's up to standard with the region. If you're in a smaller city like Flore or Saranda or Gjirokastër, and you for some reason need to go to the hospital, I would just take your car or the bus or whatever and go to Tirana. The country is very small, so you're never gonna have to drive more than 4 hours anyway to Tirana. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily risk any sort of procedure in a smaller Albanian city. Just head to Tirana and let them figure you out. Language. As I just touched on, Albanians are fantastic linguistic people. I was super impressed at the quality of English for almost every young person in Albania. There was almost no Albanian that I came in contact with that didn't speak a second language. So obviously Albanian language is very, very small. There's something like 11 million native Albanian speakers. The country itself only has something like 7 or 8 million people. There's an Albanian diaspora, or also Albanians living outside Albania, in nearby Montenegro, in Greece, in Macedonia. 25% of Macedonia's population is also Albanian. And then of course in Kosovo, Albania. So I mean Kosovo basically. So there Albanian language exists, but if you need to speak English, really common. If you're in Kosovo, which is, you know, a very similar society to Albania, also a lot of Kosovars, they speak Turkish. So they're like trilingual, which is super impressive. And the cool part is they have almost every sound in the Albanian language that we have in American English. So when they're talking to you, it actually sounds like they're speaking nearly accent-free, and they speak very quickly and rapidly like a local American. So you have lots of like people who are very linguistically talented, sound like Americans, and then you get there and you're like, have you been to the United States? They say, I've never left Albania. So I applaud the Albanians for the linguistic skills. It's very, very impressive. When you also get closer to the edges of Albania, the borders, if you go closer to Greece, a lot of the Albanians also speak Greek. If you go to the north towards Montenegro, some of the Albanians also speak Montenegrin or Serbo-Croatian or whatever you want to call that language. So there's definitely a lot of people who you can communicate with. And for whatever reason, historically speaking, if they just don't speak English and you're talking to someone from an older generation, the language that you should be speaking is Italian. Albania was colonized by Italy for an amount of years before they were independent and after World War II. So they were taken over by fascist Italy. And so a lot of the older people speak Italian, and Italian TV was very popular in Albania. So a lot of young people too also listened to the Italian language their kind of whole life. I remember going to a village on the border of Greece, and I wasn't able to communicate with any of the Albanian people because I don't know Greek, I don't know Albanian. But the majority of the older men spoke broken Italian, and I can speak pretty broken Italian. So it was a way to get around. I was able to ask questions, and it's just like not what you would necessarily expect walking around the mountain hills of near Greece, but that is a thing that exists. So if you do speak Italian, you can use it. Also, Albanians are super proud of their language, and a lot of Albanians consider it one of the first, if not the first, native European language. So don't talk trash about the Albanian language. Certainly don't compare it to Greek, and you'll probably be fine. Safety and security. So Albania, I would say, is a very safe country. I think the Albanian people are wonderful. In certain areas, there can be some serious poverty because Albania is one of the poorest countries in Europe. And the only safety or security kind of thing that I would watch out for are gypsies, also known as Roma people. It depends what you consider offensive or not. I think gypsies is fine. There's a lot of homeless gypsies. A lot of them are always homeless, and they wander around the city center. There's definitely some thieving going on. There's definitely a little bit of scamming going on regarding those people. I sat at a coffee shop, and every day they'd send little kids to go try and distract me while someone behind me would try and take my wallet. That happened every once in a while. So that's something to be aware of. Although, like for a man, walking around in Tirana, for example, is very safe. I didn't find that there was any neighborhood that was necessarily dangerous. I think the fact is it's just Albania is poor. So the more you get out of the city center, especially in bigger cities, they're pretty rough around the edges. If you go to Durrës, which is the biggest gypsy population in Albania, like I went to the city center and there was like a group of gypsies burning like some wood just like in the city center. So that seemed okay. But it didn't necessarily make it sketchy. I just think there's very few Albanians that are like Albanian, like national Albanians that are begging on the street or kind of doing anything weird. I would just say it's a gypsy issue. So if this offended you, I'm sorry, but that's just kind of the reality. If you talk to Albanians about it, they'll probably say the same thing. I'm not really holding punches on this one because that kind of culture also is very big on making children stay out of school and making them beg on the streets for money as a sort of scam. And I just don't vibe with that. So I've seen it all over the Balkans, actually all over Europe. It's the first thing as an American that you see when you travel that's a little bit shocking is kids begging, and you always ask, how can this be in Europe? And in Albania and Macedonia, it's kind of on steroids because the amount of gypsies living in those countries is just higher. So I would say that Albanian's great. I would say be wary of the gypsies because I've met very few, if not any, gypsies that are not trying to scam me or use their children to scam me. So if you have a similar experience in Albania or in Europe, I'm curious about your comment below. I believe all cultures are interesting and valid, but I don't believe in cultures that make their children homeless slaves. I just don't believe in that. Scams. So as I said, beware the gypsy. And secondarily, I would say be wary of the taxis. There's good taxis and bad taxis. The worst thing that's gonna happen to you with the taxi is just they're gonna rip you off. They're gonna take some cash from you, say they don't have change, and then they're gonna give you back a fake note. that could happen. Secondarily, they could have a meter that doesn't work correctly. So I've had this experience all over the Balkans. You get in and the meter goes and all of a sudden your taxi ride, which should cost $3, costs like $150. So they don't have, at least the last one I was there, they didn't have taxi apps, which I find unbelievable in 2022. But they have this various WhatsApp numbers that you can call and a taxi will show up. So that's a way to go. Definitely like look for those numbers. If you're in Albania and you're watching this, if you could drop the name of those companies, as I was in Albania almost 2 years ago, so I don't quite remember. But those were helpful. You know, you can call them any time of night and they'll come and pick you up. But yeah, just don't take local taxis. I think that's just a rule in the Balkans, just to avoid scamming yourself out of money, because you're putting yourself like really out there to be taken advantage of. Transportation. I think Albania is a really well-connected country and it's old school as well. So like they don't necessarily have these big buses to get around the country. They have these marshutkas that they say in Russian, the small mini buses that you kind of just hop in. So you can hop in on the side of a road, they'll stop. They play that really like crazy Albanian Balkan music, and it's kind of like the experience that you're looking for if you're a little bit more of a adventure traveler like I am. They only have one airport basically in the whole country. So you can fly to Tirana, you can fly out of Tirana. There's really cheap flights to Italy. So you can actually go to Milan and then you can travel everywhere from Milan really easily. Although Albania is a little bit like isolated as far as like air travel, because not a lot of people are flying to Tirana. There's lots of countries you can go to from Albania. You can go north to Montenegro, super beautiful drive. You can go south to Greece, super beautiful drive. You can go east to Macedonia, interesting drive. There's lots of options for you, and I think it's a pretty well-connected country. In Tirana, the buses were like 10 cents, and they were really efficient. They actually were using old donated German buses from like Berlin. They didn't even change the advertisement, so it literally had the Berlin like QR codes and everything, which I kind of respect, like the just complete lack of like infrastructural care. They're like, we'll take your buses, but we're actually not even gonna do anything to them. We'll just use them until we drive them into the ground. So I kind of like that. Tirana had awful traffic, but the point is like, you don't necessarily need to go anywhere in Tirana. You can just live in the city center. It's very safe. It's very beautiful. There's like lots of nice things to do. The outskirts of Tirana, there's not much to do anyways. So there's no reason to really like be spending lots of time in a bus unless your friend lives in a different part of the city. That's kind of the same for a lot of the other Albanian cities. They have a nice city center, and then there's just kind of like residential housing around them, unless they're like a UNESCO city. But I wouldn't say that the transportation is super necessary. Transportation and buses are super cheap just in general, like city to city. Trains, I took an Albanian train. You can check out like one of my videos, I'll link it here. Horrible, just bad. So I think Albania is in one of those moments where they were really poor infrastructurally, and now they're slowly getting better through the donations of other countries and then new investment from other places. So I just think like if you're there now, it's only gonna get better. You see people also driving around in brand new cars. Albania has a big scam where people steal cars in Germany and in the Netherlands and in Belgium and stuff, and they just drive them to Albania. So you see a lot of like foreign plates. You also see a lot of just like chopped up Range Rovers and BMWs. It's a very funny thing. There's maybe more BMWs or Mercedes in Albania than there are in Germany. It's like they figured something out. To go with that story, you should be aware that the Albanian mafia is very much a thing. So if you go clubbing or you go into the nightlife situation, realize that if you see someone who's very wealthy, they could just come from a good family, and they may, from some industrial family, or they may come from the Albanian mafia, which has ties through the entirety of Europe. So just be careful with who you talk to, and if you see people riding around in very expensive cars, realize that half of those people are very normal, and then half of them are criminals. So I wouldn't want to make like a judgment on that, but that's a very common thing you see in a lot of the Balkans. The people with fancy cars and who are playing very loud rap music and stuff, a lot of them are in the mafia. So I've never had an issue, but it's something to be aware of in case you get drunk and want to fight an Albanian guy. So who are the Albanians, the Shqiptar? They are one of the oldest peoples in Europe that they identify with. Some people also call them the white Muslims because their population is very mixed. They have a big Catholic population, they have a big general Christian population, and then something like over 54% of Albanians identify as, I believe, Sunni Islamic. So the main point is that Albanian history was first, they believe in this man named Skanderbeg, who is kind of the legendary defender of Europe from the Islamic Inquisition led by the Ottomans. They identify very heavily with this, but Islam, of course, became very common as Albania was part of the Ottoman Empire, basically from the 1500s until the fall of the Ottoman Empire in the early 1900s. Albania had a king for a little bit, and then they had a crazy communist dictator named Enver Hoxha. I have a video about that too. It's very interesting. They were one of the most North Korea-like states in the world for almost 30 years, completely locked down. And now Albania has opened itself up. They're not in the Eurozone, so when you fly into Albania, it's like a totally different country. If you're doing the Schengen thing and you're in the EU and you want to go someplace that's cool while you're renewing your visa, Albania is close. It's relatively cheap, and it's a good place to do it. I find Albanian people super nice. Women are very beautiful, very friendly. I think going out with Albanian women, if that's what you would like to do, is something that's very feasible. A lot of people speak English, and also Albanian dudes, at least for me, super fun. The culture is like really, really great because if you go out with Albanian people, they will not let you pay. There's like this cultural idea that the guest is the king, and even though I may have way more money than my Albanian host, they will not let me pay. They may sneak and pay before I even get to know. And I have to say, the hospitality, that old school, old world hospitality, is super vibrant and alive in Albania. So both for women, if you go on a date with an Albanian girl, and both for men, if you're hanging out with your boys and drinking beer, you're probably not gonna pay for that beer. But be aware that if you go hang out a second time, you probably will have to pay for that beer and also the beer of the friend that bought you the beers the first time. So Albanians have this funny thing where they get into debt because they have a big night out, one guy pays, and then you go out another night and maybe you don't have enough money, but you have to pay, you want to pay for everyone the secondary night. So going out with Albanians can be dangerous for the wallet a little bit, but not really, because if you're getting foreign currency like dollars or euros, the exchange rate is super high. Albanians are also pretty nationalist, so this symbol means a lot to them, and it's a really big part of who they are. I wouldn't talk trash about Albanians in Albania, they just don't like that. Also, don't necessarily talk about kind of interstate politics, as Albania has a big problem with Greece historically. They have a very big problem with Macedonia right now. And the ex-Yugoslav countries obviously have a big issue with Albania, mostly because of the sort of division that Kosovo is between Serbia and Albania. That's probably the biggest kind of fight that there is in the Balkans today. Serbians, if you wear this in Serbia, you'll probably get punched in the face. And if you wear this in Albania, if you wear a Serbian shirt in Albania, you'll probably get punched in the face. So the Albanians, and not just the Albanians, but the Balkan people in general, do not hold back on the nationalist rhetoric. They're very, very pro them. They're very, very anti the other guy. For me, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the cultures have much more in common than not in common. But it's an important thing, and it's also maybe if you're with Albanians or you're walking around the street, just don't talk about it. Just avoid the whole subject. Or else you're gonna get into some sort of aggressive argument, either with a friend or with a stranger. Just skip it. It's not worth it. Older Albanians are also super cool. They're very old world. You see kind of people drinking rakia, which is the sort of local alcohol, sitting at a table, smoking a cigarette, listening to Albanian music with their friends at 9 in the morning. Obviously, there's a high unemployment rate in Albania, and that's probably not a good thing. But the men sort of outdoor drinking culture is very very strong. The roots go deep, and everyone's very friendly typically. Even though a lot of the older people experience some pretty serious communism and the weird things that come with that, The older people are still like very friendly and will offer you samples of things and want to sit with you and try and talk with you, show you around even. Literally, I had endless good experiences in Albania, and I still say it's like one of my favorite countries on the planet. Words to know in Albanian. Wow, what a weird thing. Like, when would you ever use these words? I don't know. I think it's a big part of traveling in different countries is it's just absorbing some things. So Albanian is very, very rarely spoken. So if you're there, you should learn these 2 words. The first one is Prishindetia. Prishindetia. I'm sure that pronunciation is crap, but that means hello. It works. The second one you should learn is Falaminderet. Falaminderet. That one means thank you, very common one. So hello and thank you, pretty much the most basic things you can learn. The secondary thing is you should learn nye or nyo. I would say that's one. So if you're getting a cappuccino, you can go mie cafe, you know, and then you can sound like a great Albanian guy, and people say, oh, are you Albanian? In Albanian, you can say, I don't speak Albanian, and then that's kind of it. So the Albanians, again, are called Shqiptar, because they have this SHQ thing, super strange. So they don't even necessarily call themselves Albanian in Albanian. So if you just like forget the word, you can learn one of the most random ways to say a country in the world, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so what should I see in Albania? Let's talk a little tourism. I stayed in Albania for like 5 weeks. I lived in Tirana in the center. People say Tirana's kind of boring. I thought Tirana was awesome. Tirana has a lot of cool cafes. It's a coffee culture. They have really nice nightlife and bars, like a couple little districts. There's this district called Bloku, which is it used to be the old protected zone of the city where Enver Hoxha used to live. Now it's turned into like a trendy like local area. You can get really nice drinks, go out for a nice night out, and it's very close to this kind of main street. Which has a pretty nice drag of nice buildings, old communist things to see, and I'm just a big fan. They also have these bunkers, which are very famous throughout the city. The bunkers were basically built by Enver Hoxha. The bunkers kind of signify the sort of military buildup that happened in Albania, and now they're decrepit, but you can find the bunker game because they're in the most random places in the city. There's something like, for every person in Albania, there's something like 3 bunkers. So yeah. Some wild stuff. If you want to go to the coast, I would recommend Durrës. It's a less touristy city. They have a really nice like little strip, an old town with really nice buildings. They have old Roman ruins, which is really cool. They have a very big like amphitheater, and really good fish. If you go to the south, you can go to Saranda, which is a beach town, resort town. It's like right across from the Greek island of Corfu, so you can do exactly what you would do in Greece for about half the price, which I think is a great deal. My highlights for me were Gjirokastër, which is a UNESCO heritage city in the south. Old stone buildings on a mountain, very beautiful, very specific, and Berat, which is a similar city a little bit closer to Tirana. Super, super recommended, beautiful views, you get that Balkan mountain vibe, and yeah, it's like wonderful. You can go to the north, and there's a place called, I believe, Thoth. I have to look it up, I'll write it here. They have beautiful waterfalls in this very like green, lush area, and it's very close to the city of Shkodër, which is on the border with Montenegro, another beautiful city with castles and a really nice old town. They have a street called the Street of Unity, which has a mosque, a church, and a synagogue all right next to each other, and it really like displays the sort of diversity that Albania has. The city is, as you get closer to the borders, Albania is very mixed, and even the city of Tirana is very mixed. There's lots of people have crossed through Albania, and you have the Italian-speaking Albanians, you have the expats from abroad who have moved back. So I think there's a lot of moving and shaking happening in Albania, and I think that's what makes it such a wonderful and like interestingly deep country. If there's any place I would say I would skip, I mean, as a culture guy, I think probably Saranda. There's not that much interesting to do in Saranda. It's just like a nice place to be. And other coastal cities like Flore or Durrës, you know, they're okay. But I think the inland areas are much better. The mountainous regions are much more interesting, and they have a lot of cultural significance. Food. Albanian food is pretty awesome. I like to think it's like a combination of all the Ottoman influence that came in with a little bit of particular European and Balkan vibes. So, you know, in any place you go, the best place you can go are these like little tavern places that do chofte, which are these little like, you know, little kebabs, and super delicious. They're served with cacik, which is like tzatziki, that's kind of a similar word, or cacik in Turkish. It's a thick yogurt dish, typically with cucumbers. Sometimes it doesn't have cucumbers, it has garlic instead. I would always get that for lunch, a couple of chofte, pretty cheap, like $2. You can get the cacik and maybe some sort of salad with olives or something for a very reasonable price. Olives were super cheap. You could buy a kilo of olives for $3. I couldn't believe it. So that was great. The coast of Albania has very nice fish. The inland of Albania is known for different dishes, especially like lamb and the interior of lamb. I think there was a dish called tava grase, which is like it's like an egg dish with like liver, also very, very tasty. Albanian food, especially the desserts, really, really good. You should try a tri leche. It's a kind of dish that comes from tres leches, so it's like a cake that has caramel and super, super tasty. You gotta go for the baklava from the Ottoman influence, and then my personal favorite, burek, or burek in Albanian, thin phyllo sheets filled with meat or cheese. Perfect thing for breakfast with a little ayran, which is a drink that they, it's like a yogurt drink. Super, super tasty. I think Albanian food, the price is right and the flavors are good. I wouldn't say it's the most diverse cuisine all the time. They have a lot of old Ottoman dishes if you can find them, but the majority it's just kind of like grilled meats, which are good. They also have a very nice sausage, the Kosovar sausage, very, very good. So if you really like or enjoy meat and grills, like Albania is definitely your country. They also have delicious flatbread that you can find. And if you're not into that so much, they also have a lot of, at least in Tirana, they have Turkish food, they have Greek food, they have other kind of influences. The one street food that you'll find in Albania is called souvlaci, which is kind of like you know, like shawarma. It comes on a spinning stick of meat, cut it off, pita bread, fries, yogurt, meat, $2. That's about as good as it's gonna get. So in conclusion, Albania is pretty safe, super beautiful, pretty cheap, people are nice, and you're gonna have a good time. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but I think that's the great part about it. It's a little bit seen better days. Some of the buildings are falling apart, some of the communities are pretty poor, but I think it gives it some charm, some localization. It feels like what it is. It's not trying to be anywhere else, and it's not hiding behind anything. It's very unabashedly Albania. So I respect places like that. I had a blast in Albania. It's really one of the places I want to go back to. The country is so beautiful, the people are so nice, and I literally have very little bad things to say about Albania. So, you know, grab some chofte, walk around the streets of Tirana, learn about the weird communist history, go hide in a bunker, and don't forget your Albanian flag. Long live Skenderbeg, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Like and subscribe if you can. And we will be doing a lot more of this series, so stay tuned if you're interested in any other countries in the Balkans or other countries that I've lived in around the world. We've got like 70 of them, so I'm just gonna start making these videos. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one. Follow me, Beret.